Thank you, Pastor Justin. Let's thank God for Pastor Justin tonight. Praise the Lord. I want to give you everything that's coming out. Unfortunately, I can't because there's so much. So I've culled most of the things that I've gone through, almost about 300 different articles every week. And I'm bringing you some that are very relative to you and some that I want you to be up to snuff with. And here's the first one. Islam is the true faith. Now, that's obviously not true, but let me tell you what it comes from. Islamic schools in America becoming recruiting grounds for Hezbollah. And it's kind of shocking to me to even read that to you, but this is what's going on. Clarion Project has discovered that a private Islamic school in Dearborn, Michigan, and Dearborn, Michigan is the hotspot for Islam in America. It's the capital, the Islamic capital of America. It's linked to diehard supporters of Hezbollah and the Iranian regime. The school teaches students from kindergarten through 9th grade. Great Revelations Academy was founded in 2015 by open supporters of Grand Ayatollah Mohammad Hussein Fadallah. By their own admission, the school's founders are dedicated to spreading his message. Fadallah was a supporter of the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran. You remember that one? Where they captured Americans. And is considered to be a key inspirer of Hezbollah, a terrorist group. So someone goes far as to describe him as the terrorist group's spiritual leader. In 2005, he reiterated his support for suicide bombings against Israel. When he died in Lebanon in 2010, Hezbollah called for 3 days of mourning. The Academy's stated objective, teaching a radical cleric's vision to children. This is how it happens. One of the Academy's founders, Fayoud Bayoun, told Arab American News that one of the purposes of creating the school was to pass along Fadallah's teaching to children in America. What they're doing is they're raising up radical Islamic terrorists. And this is in a grade school. So on August 9, 2018, the Academy posted an advertising for an event it was holding called the Kind Project. Right from the Kind Project says, we want to endeavor to implant in the hearts and the souls of our children the confidence that makes them proud of their religion and to maintain the power that Allah has instilled in their souls to make them the leaders of future to uphold the flag of Islam. Sounds good, but watch. Ayad Qayyam Project exalts Hezbollah, the Iranian-sponsored Lebanese terror group, as well as the terrorist group Hamas. Particularly disturbing is the fact that the Calm Project has a youth program. On the project's website is an article endorsing the Iranian regime, expressing an anti-American worldview. And this is a school in America, getting America subsidies, and yes, they get American subsidies because they're a minority. And it's a private school in America, and they're teaching their kids to be radical Islamists. Now it goes a little bit further, and it says this. It says the article also urges Shiite-Sunni unity in the jihad, which is a holy war, against the so-called enemies of Islam, with Hamas being pointed to as a worthy ally. That's Jews and Christians, Israel and America. So imagine, with all the government intervention in America, you would wonder why they would not do something about this. Why they wouldn't say, listen, we don't want you raising terrorist children in your freedom. Our freedoms are hurting us. People have the freedom to come here and do anything they want to do, and that's hurting us. It celebrates the victory of Palestinian resistance movement over the Zionist enemies in Gaza. That was a great, glorious victory, they said. In addition, the Zionist regime and its supporters, especially the United States, were disgraced by the world, they said. They were publicly disgraced. That was a great victory for all Muslims. These are American kids. These were born in America, and they're talking against their country. Come on, in America, I say, shut these anti-American schools down. I mean, why don't you make some legislation and say, listen, if you're not for us, you're against it. If you want to practice Islam, go someplace and practice it if you want to radically change America. It's unconscionable to me. Let me give you this one also. There's some things happening in New World Order. I put it because we know the Antichrist is going to bring everything to one, and we've been telling you that, and I've been talking about that an awful lot. But we know that everything, economically, socially, governmentally, it's all going to come to one, and we're seeing the harbingers of that. We're seeing the prerequisites for that, whether it's the banking system, or whether it's Bitcoin, or whether it's cyber currencies, other cyber currencies, or whether seeing it's a global economy, which I'll tell you about in a moment. And also whether it's numbering us, and more we're getting numbered and we're getting tracked. Listen to this one. We're all being judged by a secret trustworthiness score. You don't know this. I didn't know it till I read it, and you will never know your score because it's not publicized. Nearly everything you buy, how we buy, and where we buy from is secretly fed into an all-powered verification service that will help companies guard against credit card and other forms of fraud, according to the Wall Street Journal. So the caveat here is that they're protecting us. But in protecting us from fraud, they are also accumulating all your information. How many of you get this? More than 16,000 signals are analyzed by the service called SIFT, S-I-F-T, which generates a SIFT score, We all have one, by the way, ranging from 1 to 100. The score is used to flag devices, credit cards, and accounts that a vendor may want to block based on a person's or entity's overall trustworthiness score, according to a company spokesman. So they want to, because we're going so quickly to digital payments, because we're using many things online, and we're using credit cards and e-payments and everything that the social media is pushing, and because a lot of people are now buying online, and because cash is being pulled back, which you'll hear another account for, they want to make sure that there's no fraud going on, or they want to minimize their fraud. So what they're doing is they're giving all the transactions that you have are going into a system. I'm not going to read you all this because it's what it tells you. And basically what it talks about is where you bought from, how you bought it online, if it was your IP address or you're buying it from some other computer, if you bought it at night. If you bought it at night, it's suspect. If you late at night, it's suspect. What you bought. And so all of that's going in, and you and I have generated a SIF score. I don't know my SIF score, you don't know your SIF score. But if your SIF score dips, they have the right to refuse your credit cards. They have the right to refuse any payments you give. Now, it's interesting because you and I cannot find out our SIF score. That to me is obtrusive. If you have something that somebody's collecting on you, you ought to be able to have the right to see it. And so we don't have that. Again, you think about all these things and the technologies that are narrowing and bottlenecking into something that may be controlled by a government or by an individual. So we're watching it happen. Let me give you a little bit more and go on with Syria and Israel. This one is from, it says, Syrian threatens to unleash tunnel warfare against Israel. Again, I won't read it all to you. I've read these and I'll just paraphrase it. What's happening is Syria has been embattled by the Kurds. They've been embattled by ISIS. They've been embattled by America, in a sense. Russia's come to their side, Bashar al-Assad's side. Iran is using it as a jello nation, bringing up all of its troops around the border. If you know about Israel and geographically, Israel to its northeast is Syria. To its directly east is Jordan. To its northeast is Syria. Also by Jordan is Iran. And so Iran is using the corridor to come up to Syria and plant some of their weapons, some of their arsenals, some of their troops, and some of their weaponry, their rockets. And then Hezbollah is to the north, directly to the north, more to the west of Israel, and it is also being used. So all of those areas are being used to bring up arms. That's one of the reasons why the Golan Heights, which borders all those areas, is strategic, and why President Trump said that he acknowledges Israel's control of it, which means they can move in now and defend themselves. But here's the thing that this article says. Syria has learned something. They've learned that ISIS had a network of tunnels. And even when we tried to bomb ISIS and take ISIS out of pocket, they used this extensive network of tunnels to be able to avoid being wiped out. Now, the Syrians have learned from that, this article says, and now Hezbollah and the Syrians and Iran are digging tunnels underneath the Golan Heights. How many of you know a little bit about history in World War II? In World War II, there was a famous battle called the Battle of Iwo Jima. That's where that flag was raised, that epic flag that we see the soldiers raising on the top of Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima was a volcanic island. We got massacred on the beach, and we had to take the bulkhead of the island. But we had trouble doing it because the Japanese had a massive series of tunnels that they communicated from. So every time we tried to get up that island, they would go back into those tunnels. That's where we had to bring in flamethrowers, and even those didn't reach all the way in. This is exactly what's happening in the Golan Heights right now. And so you may not hear it in your news today, you may never hear it in your news in America, but sooner or later they're going to start tunneling underneath that Golan. And they're pretty precipitous mountains. They're pretty high, but they're tunneling under them right now. So that article is a warning about what's happening there. Let me give you a couple other things. We go to economy and tell you about that. That's a symbol for a Bitcoin. It's not a Bitcoin. There's no such image of a Bitcoin. It's just a symbol. So rising cashless payments stokes concerns over data. Listen to this, said Kirsten Thompson, a partner at Denton's and national lead of the firm's Transformative Technologies and Data Strategy Group. Cash, not Bitcoin, she says, was the original anonymous currency, and we lose something by getting rid of it. So we've been talking about a cashless society. It's anonymous. If I want to pay something in cash, no one else knows it except me and the person I'm paying. Not too long ago, I had to pay for something construction-wise in my home, and I didn't get to the bank, so I had to pay a pretty good amount of cash, and I had it to pay to this driver that brought up the products, and he said, he got nervous. He was a young kid. I said, what am I going to do with all this cash? I said, well, it's really not that much. And he said, well, can you wrap it all up and put it in an envelope and staple it and put a rubber band around it? He says, I have a couple more deliveries, but I got to bring this right back to the office. They're not going to believe that you gave me cash. I said, are you kidding me? I said, are you kidding me? I said, put it in your glove compartment and lock your glove compartment. He says, oh, I can't believe that. He says, I've never seen so much cash. And it wasn't that much cash. And I said, you don't handle cash? He says, I don't handle any cash. He says, I've never seen this much in one place. You'd think I gave him $100,000. It was a couple $1,000s. I said, listen, it's okay. You can take it. I promise you, it's going to be all right. He says, I don't know what to do with this. And I said, run back to the office. Just give it to them. Do something. Listen to what's going on here. It says this: in advising big banks and financial service companies on cybersecurity and payment systems, Mrs. Thompson is more attuned than most to the risks and implications of cashless payments. The shift towards a cashless society is well underway in Canada, as credit and debit cards, online transactions, and digital wallets increasingly replace cash in the preferred modes of payment. Cash now accounts for just 12% of point-of-sale transactions, only 12% in Canada, according to Payments Canada, a most recent report. And payment processor Moneris forecast that by 2030, just 8% of all commercial transactions, in Canada, will be settled by cash. So when you think about that, think about when I tell you about a cashless society, we are advancing extremely, extremely fast towards that, every nation on the planet. Speaking of economic woes, let me give you a little bit more. Another article, economic shockwaves. Saudi Arabia is threatening to drop the petrodollar. Now, I've talked to you about this a little bit before, but I'll rehearse it again with you. 3 years ago, almost to the day, Saudi Arabia rattled its first saber toward the United States with an implicit threat to dump U.S. treasuries over Congress's decision to allow the Saudis to be held responsible for the 9/11 attacks. We were going to sue the Saudis for the 9/11 attacks. In a stunning report by the New York Times, Saudi Arabia told the Obama administration and members of Congress that it will sell off hundreds of billions of dollars worth of American assets held by the kingdom if Congress passes a bill that would allow the Saudi government to be held responsible for in American courts for any role in the September 11, 2001 attacks. Now, then 6 months ago, the Saudis once again threatened to weaponize their wealth as the biggest importer of arms for America in the world. So the Saudis buy the most amount of arms from us. It's one of the reasons why Khashoggi, who is a journalist from the New York Times, I think it was New York Times or it was Washington Post, was murdered in the Saudi embassy, and we didn't do anything about it. And the reason why we didn't do anything about it is we were having a massive arms sale to them at that time. They buy the most weapons from America than anybody in the planet. Now the Saudis are threatening because we're telling them that they can't just hike up their oil or do whatever they want to do. Saudi Arabia is threatening to drop the dollar as its main currency in selling its oil if the U.S. passes a bill that exposes OPEC members to U.S. antitrust lawsuits. So what does that mean? Well, I've told you this before. If you want to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, anyone in the world wants to buy it, they have to use American dollars. American dollars, it's called a petrodollar. It's based on American money. Venezuela is not doing that. They're selling their oil and they're purposely not taking American dollars. Russia has had some spots that they're taking oil from and they're paying in rubles. They don't want to beef up the American economy. So if China wants to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, they got to change their yuans to American dollars in order to buy oil. So what they're doing also is this. China is looking to try to go directly to Saudi Arabia with yuans. That would implode American economy. Not only that, because countries know American dollar, the petrodollar is very, very high in the market, and they know that they need that, what countries around the world done is they have taken, it's called the reserve currency of the world. The American dollar is the reserve currency of the world. So countries stockpile American dollars. They do it through American securities, through treasury bonds, through outright cash. They stockpile it because it makes their economy beef up. How many of you get this? So Saudi Arabia is trying to say, we're going to stop that. Well, the American economy will implode. So what I've done is I've gone and did some more charts and did a little bit more study for you. And I wanted to know, if countries do this, what they're going to do, if they drop the American dollar, and they're doing it right now, they're going to start putting their money in something else, predominantly gold. Now let me show you what's happening so you can see this chart. The brown there is Russia's international reserves in gold. You can see from 2007, Russia has been buying up gold. They're trying to hedge against the American dollar. If the American dollar falls, gold will be king. Gold will skyrocket. Trust me, it'll skyrocket. If you see that green line, that's the U.S. Treasury securities and foreign holders in Russia. So they're dumping U.S. securities. They're buying gold by dumping U.S. securities. So they're getting rid of American money and they're buying gold. How many are getting this? It's not just Russia. Let me show you a little bit more. This is the dollar share of reserves in China and the yuan. If you see the yuan share of reserves, they're stocking up more yuan. It's the red line to the right. Look at the dollar share of reserves. They are dumping the dollars. Again, China's doing it. Russia's doing it. Let me give you another chart. China official gold reserves. This is from 2015. From 2015, their gold reserves are going through the roof. They are buying gold en masse. China's buying gold. I don't have all the charts for it. India's buying gold. Pakistan's buying gold. I think someone once told me, I think I read once, that if you took all the gold in the world, there's not that much, if it was in a cube shape, it would be the size of a football field, 300 yards long, 50 yards wide, and it would be about 75 yards high. Now, it may sound like a lot to you, but this is all the gold in the world. It's very, very limited. So the reserve currency right now is the American dollar. If the American dollar stops being the reserve currency, our country will literally plummet into a recession almost overnight. Let me show you that it doesn't always have to be the American dollar. Look at this. This is history to tell you the reserve currency in the world. In Portugal, in 1400s, Portugal had the reserve currency. Then it went to Spain, the pieces of eight in 1500s. The sun never set on the British Empire, but before the British Empire, Spain was ruling the world, and they had the reserve currency. Netherlands had it in 1750. France around the end of 1790. Britain, sun never sets in the British Isles. They had it from 1925, and the United States took it over in about 1926. We became the reserve currency. These countries have lost their status, and all you have to do is look at them right now. Portugal and Spain are almost bankrupt, by the way. France and the Netherlands, they're nothing to contend with. Britain's dollar is in trouble, and the United States. So Britain is the last one to lose the reserve currency status, and we are very, very close to there. So somebody says to me, so what? So what does that all mean? Well, it means this. If you have some cash that you're looking to invest, there's a lot of people investing in the stock market right now. That stock market is going to implode if this happens. It's going to implode maybe even before that. But gold and silver is a great hedge for your money. Now, again, I'm not trying to be the harbinger of bad news, but that's what's happening in the world. It's your world, and it's happening right now. Let me go a little bit to war. Chinese anti-satellite laser base. We just found this week. This is an anti-satellite tracking base. It has radio telescopes. That one arrow shows you that, the parabolic dish antenna. And they're tracking satellites. Above our planet, it's a junkyard. We have about 2,300 satellites circling the world right now. A lot of those are communication satellites, the reason why you can use your cell phones. And a lot of them are television satellites. A lot of them are satellites that are based on our government. And a lot of them are satellites that are spying on other countries. China is the first country ever to have something. We don't know exactly how they do it, but they can take out any satellite they want from the ground. And that is a game changer. This is one of the things that shows it. Whether they do it or not, obviously it would make an international war. But remember the kings of the East? The Bible says they're going to rise, and China is doing everything they can to do just that. They can identify and target satellites with this new weaponry. Let me give you a little bit more as we go on to moral decay. Don't you just love in the news? Listen, in the news is tough, is it not? But how many of you know you'd rather my people perish for lack of what? Knowledge. So this one's even, all of this bothers me. When I do it in the news, it bothers me. I want you to know that. Not just you hearing it, me studying it bothers me. When a homosexual Episcopalian calls Trump's Christianity hypocritical. If ever there was a glaring instance of the pot calling the kettle black, that's this guy. It was when South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg, a professing Christian and practicing homosexual. Now, I'm going to get letters from this, and that's okay. I think that's an oxymoron. I think being a practicing Christian I think something's wrong there. He called President Trump a hypocritical Christian. Seriously? To be clear, he says this article where he says, I have no problem with someone questioning whether President Trump is a true Christian. An evangelical friend of mine who has met with Trump on several occasions recently told me that he does not believe the president has had a true conversion experience, but that he does truly fear God. Other friends who have met with him have told me that they believe Trump loves Jesus, but is a mere babe when it comes to the Christian faith. Ultimately, only God knows the state of Donald Trump's soul. Let me remind you of something. When we elected Donald Trump, we did not elect a preacher. We elected a president. Come on. One thing, though, is sure. Donald Trump does not claim to be a model Christian, nor should we look to him for his example on how to live out our faith. What is ultimately absurd, though, is for a man who professes to be a serious Christian, yet is pro-abortion and married to a same-sex partner, to call Trump's allegedly hypocrisy. According to USA Today, which wholeheartedly supports Buttigieg's position, of course they do, they're liberal, without a hint of awareness of the irony of it all, Mayor Pete stands out as, they say, quote, as a devoted Christian. He criticized right-wing Christians for saying so much about what Christ said so little about, and so little about what he has said so much about. As for Trump, he said, quote, I'm reluctant to comment on another person's faith, but I would say it's hard to look at this president's actions and believe that they're the actions of somebody who believes in God. Wow. Okay, Is Buttigieg guilty of judging President Trump in a way that violates the Lord's mandate not to judge? This is Matthew 7. Certainly it's possible, since he's judging largely by secondhand information and outward appearance. More importantly, though, Buttigieg is certainly guilty of the very hypocrisy which Jesus clearly rebuked in Matthew chapter 7, saying, why do you see the speck that's in your brother's eye, but you don't notice the log that's in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye when there's a log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you'll see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. So here's another thing. It says, first, Buttigieg says that one of his favorite verses in the Bible is where Jesus says, whatever you do for one of the least of these, you've done it for me. That's Matthew 25. Yet Buttigieg claims that when it comes to abortion, Jesus never mentioned the issue. So for Buttigieg, whose platform is thoroughly to the left, innocent, helpless babies in the womb are not included in the least of these. Yet illegal immigrants are. Good point. So much for caring for the least of these. Yet when Trump and Pence take strong pro-life stances, Buttigieg deems this hypocritical. He also criticizes Pence as a cheerleader of the porn star presidency. Not too judgmental. What do you think? Second, as an out-and-out proud gay man, Buttigieg must discard the entire testimony of Scripture, since every single reference to homosexual practice in the Bible is condemning, without a single positive homosexual affirming statement of any kind. It says it would be one thing if Buttigieg said, I struggle with same-sex attractions, but as a committed Christian, I do not affirm these desires, act on them, or celebrate them. That would be highly commendable. Instead, he wants everyone to see that, quote, our marriages are just as good as theirs, even if that means rewriting the Bible and throwing out almost 2,000 years of virtually anonymous teaching on the subject through all branches of Christianity. Buttigieg would say, after all, God is love, and love wins. So we're watching it. We're watching this mutation come on Christianity. Let me give you another one. Canadian tribunal fines man $55,000 for misgendering. We told you this was coming. We warned you it would happen. We were not crying wolf. We were telling you the truth. And now it's here. As headlines announce, Canadian tribunal fines Bill Watcott $55,000 for expressing Christian views on transgenderism. In other words, Watcott called a biological male who identified as a female a biological male. And that was his crime. That was his only crime. What a miscarriage of justice. What an assault of freedom of speech and expression. John Carpe, president of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom, defended Walcott, noting in his protest, quote, the Supreme Court of Canada has long held that freedom of expression is the lifeblood of democracy, but not when it crosses the line of transgender activism. Freedom halts there. Carpe added, society is full of people with diverse views, and the tribunal's decision undermines the foundational principles of the free society and jeopardizes the health of Canada's democracy. Last month, a Catholic journalist in England was interrogated by police at her house after she misgendered a child with whom she had appeared on TV. How dare she identify the child based on its biological sex? Now in Canada, a Christian activist has been found $55,000 for the hateful act of misgendering an adult male. How soon before this reaches America? Well, it's already here. In reality, some of these laws are already on the books in America, with New York City calling for fines of up to $250,000 for misgendering someone in the workplace. You know what I'm going to do if I get to New York and I have to talk to somebody and say, hey, you. Yeah. Listen, this was put in place in 2015, and in 2016, a transgender school teacher in Oregon won a $60,000 settlement from a school district after coworkers allegedly failed to address the teacher by the proper gender pronouns. Is the water hot enough for the frog to take notice yet? So we're watching it happen in America. Transgenderism is rising to the civil rights spot. They're talking about transgenderism just like you would talk about race riots or talking about having a prejudice against somebody's skin color. Let me remind you, that is not the same. Transgenderism is a choice. Skin color you're born with. Come on, somebody say amen. They are not the same. But in America, it looks like they are. Let me give you a little bit about religion. The Pope's in the news again. Yeah, that's what I said. Pope, listen to this, I'm quoting, your mission is not conversion. Now listen to this, I grew up as a Roman Catholic. This is absolutely unbelievable to me. Pope Francis told Morocco's tiny Catholic community on Sunday, past Sunday, their role in the predominantly Muslim country was not to convert their neighbors, but live in brotherhood with all faiths. That's interesting, because Jesus said to go out and make converts. Go out and, it's called the Great Commission. The Great Commission is to go out and make disciples, go out and tell them about the good news. He's telling them, don't go out and do that. Do not tell them about Jesus. You just live with them in good harmony. Francis said used this 2-day trip to stress their interfaith dialogue. He's also backed Moroccan King Mohammed VI's efforts to spread a form of Islam that promotes interreligious dialogue and rejects violence in God's name. The country has 23,000 Roman Catholics, most of them expatriate Europeans, mainly French and sub-Saharan African migrants, make up less than 1% of the population of about 35 million. So he's telling them, do not share your faith. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine a pope or anybody that's Christian saying, don't share your faith? Jesus said to share your faith. This is the good news. This is the thing you want to share. He said, no, just live happily with them. Because he has also said Muslims and Christians both go to the same heaven. They do not. And listen, Jesus, and I told you this before, Jesus said, no one gets to the Father except through me. No one. You can't get to the Father through Muhammad. And listen, Islam calls Jesus just a prophet. On the Dome of the Rock, and I've told you this before, up in the Dome of the Rock in Arabic, it says, God has no son. That is a blasphemy. What the Pope is saying is Jesus is wrong. That's what he's saying. He's saying Jesus was wrong. He got it all wrong. So when the Pope calls the Son of God wrong, I have problems with the Pope. This is a perfect example of someone who can be the false prophet. Perfect example. And by the way, I've never seen a Pope act like this. Never. I have never seen a Pope do something like this. And so this is something that is really setting him up, I believe. So when you ask me if we're living in the last days, yes, we're living in the last days. You have someone who is perfect for a false prophet just right now in place. And we're watching the Catholic Church change and make that. Remember, there are over 2.5 billion people on the planet. All right, let me give you a little bit more. This one's kind of interesting also in religion. This is called the nuns. Americans with no religion increased by 266% in the last 30 years. Over the last 30 years, there have been a mass exodus out of organized religion in the United States. Each year the needle has only moved a little bit, but over the long term, what we have witnessed has been nothing short of a seismic shift. Never before in American history have we seen such dramatic movement away from the Christian faith. And this has enormous implications for the future of our nation. According to a survey that was just released, the percentage of Americans that claim to have no religion has increased to 266% since 1991. People with no religion, known as nuns, among statisticians, wait till you hear this, account for 23.1% of the United States population. Catholics, by the way, in the United States population is 23%. They outnumber Catholics. Evangelicals, you and I, are 22.5. They outnumber us. It's the largest religious group in America. The ones who have no religion are this is the dynamic paradigm shift for America. The ones with no religion. In other words, the nuns are now officially the largest religious group in the United States. At one time, it would have been extremely difficult to imagine that one day the nuns would someday surpass evangelical Christians, but it's actually happened. And the biggest movement that we've seen has been among our young people. According to a different survey, 2/3 of Christian young adults say that they stopped going to church at some point between the ages of 18 and 22. So much for our progressive Christianity, trying to reach the people where they are. You may have a couple big churches right here and right there, but the people don't stay. And basically what's happening is the 18 to 22-year-olds are leaving en masse. Large numbers of young people who frequently attended Protestant worship service in high school are dropping totally out of church. These are the exact same patterns we saw happen in Europe. Now listen to this, because history repeats itself. And now most of those countries are considered to be post-Christian societies. Their churches are empty. They're being sold as warehouses. They're being sold to Muslims. They're empty. Those large cathedrals are empty. Nobody goes there anymore. And we're going just the exact same way in our liberal theology as Canada was and as as England was and as Europe has. The young adults of today are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. That's scary. And they have a much higher percentage of nuns than the population as a whole. Today, nearly 4 in 10 young adults ages 18 to 29 are religiously unaffiliated. 3 times the unaffiliated rate among seniors 65 and older. In 1986, for example, only 8% of young adults claimed no religious affiliation. To go from 8% during Ronald Reagan's second term to 40% today is an absolute colossal shift. Right now, only 27% of U.S. millennials attend church on a regular basis. That's 2.7 out of 10. Most of them simply have no interest in being heavily involved in organized religion. And even the young people, listen to this one, even the young people that are involved in church do not seem to be very keen on sharing their faith with others. According to one of the most shocking surveys that I have seen in a long time, 50% of millennials that consider themselves to be practicing Christians believe that it's wrong to share the gospel with others. What are we doing in our churches? What are we telling people? What are we trying to do? Why don't we just preach the Word of God? If you preach the Word of God, people are going to get drawn to it. Young people, old people are going to. But if you preach fads, people are going to come and they're going to go. Trust me. Come on, somebody give me an amen. A new study from a California-based Barna Group, which compiles data on Christian trends in American culture, has revealed. By the way, I know George Barna. He is so upset with Christianity in America. Every time you talk to him, I've been to many conferences where he was there. I know him personally. He is so ticked with the American church, it's not even funny, because he's watching it slide downhill. And he's been ticked for about 10 years now. Listen, A new study from the California-based firm Barna Group, which compiles data on Christian trends in American culture, has revealed a staggering number of American millennials think evangelism is wrong. A whopping 50% of millennials born between 1984 and 1998 agreed at least somewhat that it is wrong to share one's personal belief with someone of a different faith in hopes that they would one day share the same faith. Well, what do we have? If we call it being saved, you know, means you're out there drowning and you throw Jesus to someone and they can get saved. No other religion is going to save you. They're going to teach you about their fundamentals. They're not going to save you. Politically, these trends indicate that America is likely to continue to move to the left. Thank you, CNN and NBC and ABC. And away from the organized religion, it's tremendous news for the Democratic Party. Somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 churches in the United States are dying every single year. That means more than 100 will die this week alone. And thousands more are teetering around the brink. In fact, most churches in America have less than 100 people attending their services. The study, which was conducted to help churches better understand growth in the pews, showed that most Protestant churches are not doing well to attracting new Christian converts. It's reporting an average of less than one Christian convert a month. It used to be called an altar call. And now we have large churches that won't even have an altar call. It's kind of interesting to me, and it's kind of sad to me to see how the church has degenerated. But even among all the bad news, there's some promising signs of the Christian faith. All throughout history, there have been relentless attempts to destroy the Christian faith, yet it's still the largest faith in the entire world. And let me tell you something. If we drop the ball, I promise you, sub-Sahara Africa will pick it up. Because in South America and in Africa, Christianity is spreading like wildfire. Australia, America, and Europe, it's declining. But the rest of the third world nations and the other nations, it's advancing, the large nations. All right, let me give you another one. This one's kind of scary. You ready for this one? You're not ready to get scared? Okay, let me scare you. This is drug-resistant super-fungus spreading across America and killing 50% of everyone it infects. About a year ago, a senior was admitted to a hospital in Brooklyn, what doctors discovered after running a blood test absolutely stunned them. Last May, an elderly man was admitted to the Brooklyn branch of Mount Sinai Hospital for abdominal surgery. A blood test revealed that he was infected with a newly discovered germ as deadly as it was mysterious. Doctors swiftly isolated him in intensive care. The germ, a fungus called Candida auris, A-U-R-I-S, preys on people with weakened immune systems, and it's quietly spreading across the globe. The man at Mount Sinai died 90 days in the hospital, died after 90 days in the hospital, but C. auris did not. Tests showed it was everywhere in his room, so invasive that the hospital needed special cleaning equipment and had to rip out some of the ceiling and floor tiles to eradicate it. Everything was positive. The walls, the bed, the doors, the curtains, the phones, the sink, the whiteboard, the poles, the pump, said Dr. Scott Lauren, the hospital president. The mattress, the bed rails, the canister holes, the window shades, the ceiling, everything in the room was positive. But unlike major potential health threats, C. auris is not confined to a particular geographic area. According to a top official from the CDC, the fungus has quickly spread all over the globe, and now it's everywhere. Following comes from Zero Hedge report. It's a creature from the Black Lagoon, says CDC's Dr. Tom Chiller, who heads the fungal branch. It's bubbled up, and now it's everywhere. In the last 5 years alone, it has swept through a hospital in Spain, hit a neonatal unit in Venezuela, spread throughout India, Pakistan, and South Africa, and forced a prestigious British medical center to close its ICU for nearly 2 weeks. We do not currently have any way to defeat C. auris. We just need hope that the number of people that it kills is minimized. The following are 3 reasons why CDC is so concerned with this fungus. 1, it's often multi-drug resistant. 2, it's difficult to identify with standard laboratory methods. 3, it has caused outbreaks in healthcare settings. If you become infected, listen to this, it's a shocking line, there's really a good chance you're going to die. Among the one group of clinical cases, patients in New York, 45% have died within 90 days. The Center for Disease Control said it identified 51 clinical case patients and 61 screen case patients in New York. CDC reported 45% of the clinical patients died within 90 days. But until this latest New York Times report, the general public has not even been allowed to hear much about C. auris, and that was by design. They're afraid that they're going to make us afraid, so they don't want to tell us anything about it. How many of you can say the word plague? When we see things happening like this, there's nothing else to call it but a plague. Now, let me give you one, I'm going to give you 2 more. Anybody know what that is? The first time ever a black hole has been photographed. This is truly amazing, and you're not going to understand all of this. You're not going to be able to wrap your head around it. I'll try to break it down a little bit for you and tell you what it means prophetically. How they got the black hole picture that changed science. An international team made of more than 200 astronomers working in it for a decade plus have captured a picture of a black hole named Mempohehi. The picture marks the first direct observation of a black hole in history. It's a sign to behold and a staggering scientific achievement. Black holes are regions of space-time, just like Earth, but unlike Earth, they have an unshakable gravitational pull that it's difficult for a small earthbound human even to comprehend. Nothing can escape their grasp, not even electromagnetic radiation such as light waves. They just suck everything into it, and that's that. Nobody knows for sure what it's like inside one, but we know nothing gets out. Black holes are formed when massive stars collapse onto themselves. It's like piling more and more books into a library. Eventually the shelves will give way and the library will collapse into a black hole. Einstein himself considered the concept of black holes too bizarre to explore further. He was wrong. Black holes are generally believed to be at the center of galaxies. We have one at the Milky Way galaxy. If you look straight up, you're going to see the Milky Way on a dark night. And you'll see a cloud that looks milky. That's the center of the Milky Way. We're in a position like this. We're on a spiral arm down here. You're looking right into the center. You can't see the other side of it. You're seeing right into the center. It takes us in our spiral arm, our solar system, 25,000 years to make one full rotation. Inside the middle of us is a black hole. Now listen to this because it's pretty interesting. It says. Black holes are generally believed to be at the center of galaxies. Scientists have typically detected them through incredibly bright lights surrounding them, emanating from a black hole's accretion disk. Now, I know you don't realize what that is, but let me just go a little bit further. So it says, what happens is its first image of black hole unveiled by astronomers is a landmark discovery. The main event, the image of the black hole at the center of the Mesner 87 galaxy, shows the effect of the accretion disk as well as the black hole's shadow. That yellow you see up there is the accretion disk, and the round around in the center is the black hole. So here's what it means. And again, you're going to have to wrap your head around this. It's been revealed yesterday, by the way, by astronomers working on Event Horizon Telescope. If you look at the edge, I'll try to take all the science out of this. If you look at the edge, that's right there, that's called the event horizon, right before it gets black. Everything is being sucked into that. You would never see the black hole unless you saw the light being sucked into it. Every single thing that gets near this is sucked into it. It's called the event horizon. Now, the image of is the supermassive black hole that lies at the center, the one you're looking at, the Mesner 87 galaxy. It's in the Virgo cluster, by the way. That's kind of interesting to me because Virgo is the woman that we saw as a sign in September 23rd, a couple of years ago, located 55 million light years from the Earth. It means light traveling at 186,000 miles a second takes 55 million years to get there. So the black hole has been determined to have a mass, you ready for this? 6.5 billion times that of the sun. That black hole is 6.5 billion times bigger than our sun, with an uncertainty of 0.7 billion solar masses. Although black holes are inherently invisible because of their extreme density and gravitational field, the researchers have managed to obtain images near the point where matter and energy can no longer escape, the so-called event horizon. So we're giving humanity its first view of the black hole, a one-way door, now listen to this, out of our universe. So what are black holes? What's the deal with them? Well, they were theorized and they were postulated first mathematically. They were mathematically proven. Nobody could actually view one. Because of the advanced telescopes and the Event Horizon Telescope, they actually took pictures of one. That's an actual picture of one. In a black hole, again, it's a hole in space. Some people believe that it warps time and space, which means if you went into that black hole and you lived, which is probably improbable, you can come out on the other side backwards in time or forwards in time. They think that might happen. They also think that it's a portal to another universe. So science is groping, wondering what's going on here. I'll tell you what's going on. Jesus said there'll be signs in the sky. That is a sign of his return. And all the black holes, for the first time to ever see one, even Einstein thought it wasn't possible to even have one. But for you to do it, the stars, and this is a star by the way, because it's a collapsed star, the stars are for, Genesis says, signs, seasons, and times. So when you see something that you've never seen before, like September 23rd alignment in Virgo, or this also in Virgo, obviously I think God's trying to tell somebody something. And I don't think it's the scientists. I think he's trying to tell us something. Come on, somebody say amen. All right, you ready for some good news? Are you? Yeah. All right, good news. Best news I can tell you. Benjamin Netanyahu won Israel's election. Now let me tell you, in spite of liberal press, fake news, and media bias. He is facing the exact same thing President Trump is facing here. One of the reasons why they're so close is because they're facing the exact same thing, and they're both right-wingers. Now, let me tell you about the elections in Israel. They're a little bit strange. If you tried to follow these, they're pretty strange. On Tuesday election, Netanyahu's right-wing Likud party got 35 seats out of 120 seats in the Knesset. Now you need 61 seats in order to have an election, in order to win the election. So they have to what they have to do, while they didn't win an outright majority of seats, it's typical for Israeli elections. Party leaders generally become prime ministers by cobbling together a parliamentary majority with the help of smaller parties. And there's lots of parties in the Knesset. In case a group of smaller right-wing parties expect to back Netanyahu, seems to be captured because he got 65 seats. And basically he has captured this election. Now let me tell you a little bit about this, because there's a Labor Party that's in a, let me divide it up this way. Let's look at a line. This is the far right, because it's my right, which is just like ours, conservative. This is the far left. This is the Central Party. The Central Party in Israel is called the Labor Party. The Labor Party hasn't won a major election since 1972. The Labor Party only won a measly 6 seats of the Knesset. This side is the liberal left, and they're all for peace. They want to they'll give land away, they'll give borders away, they're the ultra liberals. They want to do anything they can. But what's happening is the liberals broke down because of Netanyahu's strong position of defending Israel. So Israel used to be, a couple of years ago, we'd go there, you'd see all these peace signs, you'd see all these banners for Israel 10 years ago. You don't see them anymore. They're losing seats because, and this is what amazes me, Hezbollah has got to be one of the dumbest terrorist groups on the planet. Because what they did right before the election is they bombed Israel. Well, the right-wingers are saying, let's defend Israel. What they should have done is entered a peace plan with them, and basically they would have got the left and they would have got anything they wanted. But they're too dumb and too ideological to even do that. So in them bombing Israel and him taking a stance on it, they actually helped elect Netanyahu. And aren't you thankful they did? Trust me, things would be a lot different if they didn't. So that's the good news for you tonight. That's in the news. I'm going to ask the ushers to come. Man, how many like in the news?